What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and, well, today you're getting an early treat to a review because, well, spoiler alert, this is going to be the only review coming out this weekend, so I figured, how about I just get this review out of the way and get it posted on a Friday, so you get a Friday review for once, because I got to listen to this one a little bit earlier, so I figured, you know what, how about I go ahead and do the review, and there you have it. But anyways, I'm going to be talking about the latest offering from Soulfly, CHAMA. This came out on October 24th, this time on Nuclear Blast Records, and this is the band's 13th studio full-length overall, and, well, I reviewed the last one, Totem, which I thought was a banger of an album. And here we are with a brand new one 3 years later, and before anyone wonders, Arthur Risk is back to doing the production this time around, and I will go ahead and say this production might be one of the most wild-sounding albums Arthur Risk has done yet. And I've heard him do a lot of wild albums, like the new Blood Incantation, I think it was like Caustic Wound, or no, it was a Gravesend, the last album from them. Like, Arthur Risk knows how to get a wild sound out of a band. And, well, so this album, a little bit different from Totem for sure. In fact, from what I've heard from other people when talking about, like, the singles that were dropping for this album, it sounds more groove metal oriented, kind of like back to their, like, early to mid era sound, because I guess Max has said that he wants Soulfly to be its own entity because he kind of was starting to feel like everything was starting to bleed into one another, whether it be Cavalera or Soulfly or Go Ahead and Die. Like, all those bands were starting to kind of bleed into one another, so he wants to make sure each band stands out for their own reasons. So in the case of Soulfly here, this time around, yeah, this album definitely gets back to more of a groove metal vibe, but still retaining a good amount of extreme metal, like to the point you could call this arguably the most extreme groove metal album of all time. Okay, maybe not that far, but in recent memory, yeah, this could be considered amongst the most extreme sounding groove metal albums out there. As we kick things off with an instrumental intro with Indigenous Inquisition, it kind of sets the mood for the album, like ambience into nasty grooves and tribal percussion, and some dissonance comes in as well. But then you get into Storm the Gates, which is just a short, actually the first few songs on this album, like really the first half of the album's fairly short, like Storm the Gates, Nihilist, both of those songs are under 3 minutes, but both songs pack a different punch. Like Storm the Gates mostly sticks to like gritty riffing and tons of groove, tons of chug. Gets a little bit folky, but it's that Brazilian folk element that you would have heard on, say, Sepultura Roots, for example. But it does have a bit of a punkiness at the end and some twangy guitars, and then Nihilist gets a little bit more on the hardcore side of things. Like, there's more hardcore rhythms and riffs happening. Even guest vocals from Todd Jones of Nails. That's the second time I brought up Todd Jones on an album recently. And it definitely fits the mood of the song. And then, as far as lead work goes, it's mostly like big dive bombs. But as far as songs that have true blue standout leads, it would be Nihilist, No Pain Equals No Power, Henna, Favelas, Dystopia. Like, those were the main songs where you got like a true blue lead, but other than that, most of the time it's like big dive bombs. And then even a doomy breakdown. Like, I'll say the breakdowns that show up on this album, little bit more kind of doomy breakdowns, like they're much slower than you would expect. But going back to like songs that like really chug, like I would say Black Hole Scum, which is the longest track of the album at 4.5 minutes, definitely goes for more of a chuggy riff vibe. Same with the title track at the end. Like, both of those songs really go for chug, the groove, some, even at times, especially on Black Hole Scum, it gets a little bit back to the hardcore again, but it's just vicious about it. Like, it's absolutely bludgeoning, but not as bludgeoning as I would say No Pain Equals No Power, which I'll talk about that in a moment. But, like, Of course, the tribal percussion really coming through on a lot of songs on here. Like Soulfly 13, which was like an interlude, but it was a pretty cool interlude with clean melody and bass melody. And then the title track even brings that in a little bit. But going back to No Pain Equals No Power, we actually get guest guitars from Dino Cazares from Fear Factory coming in to do some guitar work, and then guest vocals from Ben Cook of No Warning and Gabe Franco from Unto Others, who are actually providing some backing vocals on this track. But this song itself, it's just all about bludgeoning riffs and grooves, but you get blast beats too, which was not something I was expecting out of this album. But it even gets into like a bit of a intimate folk moment. But then Henna, like this one as well as Favala Dystopia, both of those songs get into like flat out thrash metal territory. Most specifically Favala Dystopia. That song might have been my favorite on the album because it has that old school Sepultura death thrash sound, kind of like something you would hear on Schizophrenia or Beneath the Remains, like big nasty tremolos, thrashiness with some death metal moments. But it does bring back some chug and groove, but it's more in like a thrash metal, death metal sense rather than a groove metal sense. Even the breakdown here might have been the best breakdown of the entire album. And then as far as Henna, it even incorporates harmonies because we have guest guitars from Michael Amott from Arch Enemy doing the leads on here and the harmonies, and they sounded awesome. Absolutely awesome. And then the last track to talk about, Always Was, Always Will Be. Mostly, again, focusing on the groove. I will admit, there's some strange riff shifts going on here where it didn't really feel natural at times. But you do get some like really cool tremolos. The song itself, though, could have been something on like Chaos AD, for example. Like it has that like aggression behind it that I do appreciate. And then the title track, the closer, basically perfectly amalgamates everything together. Chuggy riffs, grooves, little bits of dissonance. It gets thrashy at times. But I like the synth play that shows up at the end to kind of add a layer of darkness to the song and to bring the album to a close. So yeah, I definitely respect Max's decision to have Soulfly kind of be more of the groove metal, almost new metal, but retaining some extreme metal in there kind of band, so that way Cavalier can be more of like the old Sepultura sound and then Go Ahead and Die being like just an all-encompassing extreme metal band with some like punk in there. So I definitely respect Max's decision to have each band be separate from each other. But I will say there are times where some of these songs can run into one another. And I will say, like, there are times where I think the bass kind of gets overshadowed by the other instruments and some of the atmospherics going on. But overall, I still thought this was a pretty damn solid album. I'll give this a 3.5. It's not as good, in my opinion, as Totem, but then again, Totem is a different style of an album. I appreciate them going back to more of a groove metal vibe on here, and it's done very effectively. But for me, when it comes to Soulfly, I prefer my Soulfly to be a little more intense, a little bit thrashier, less about the groove. But that's just me. So if you love Soulfly, you're going to dig this for sure. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching, keep your horns high, and your dreams wet.